Welcome in, Canuck fans. It is season 5, episode 14, episode 160 overall. My name is Doug.
And I am J-Bo or Brendan, whatever you want to call me. I don't really or come up with something else. I don't care.
We don't have any Pete this week, Brendan, but we do have a game flight to
No,
get
no,
into.
no Pete. Oh
Yeah,
shit.
I think
Oh.
I think he's in Peru, I believe, or South America somewhere.
Tough
But
life.
oh, dude, tell me about it. Tell me about it. But yeah, let's jump into this game flight. Quite a bit of excitement, I think, to talk about.
Just a little bit.
The Canucks went to St. Louis and unfortunately came away with a 2-1 loss. It was honestly one of the more boring games the Canucks had played the last little while. I do think that they did outplay St. Louis, but yeah, Connor Garland is your only goal scorer for the Canucks, and they come away with 0 points.
They then go to New Jersey where Rick Tocchet decides that it's time to reunite the lotto line in a game that really the Canucks scored 6 goals. They could have scored many, many, many more with the amount of chances they had. Um, and really, New Jersey was flattered by a 6-4 scoreline. Pedersen had two, Miller had two, Garland had one, and Dakota Joshua, who's becoming the new age Louis Erickson with the empty netter to seal it off. But yeah, it was a performance that looked a lot better than I think the scoreline would indicate, because I thought they dominated the majority of that hockey game.
I agree. Then the Canucks went and took on at the time, Eastern leading New York Rangers. And again, scored 6 goals. A beautiful goal by Elias Pettersson and Nils Hoglander. Probably going to end up on goal of the year highlights when this season's done and dusted. But yeah, a 6-3 victory for the Canucks against the Rangers. Petey had a 4-point night. Brock Besser had a 3-point night. Hoglander with 2 goals and another dominant performance from this Canuck team.
And then finally, in Long Island, the Canucks do something that they have never done in team history, and that is beat the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Devils in the same season. People were pointing out, I had to point out to people, it's not that the first time that they did it within the same road trip, it's the first time they did it within the same season, regardless of whether it was on the same road trip. They beat the Islanders 5-2. Really, their most complete performance of that road trip. They were great defensively in that game and really did a good job smothering the Islanders. Hronek, Hughes, Pedersen, Myers, and Dakota Joshua with another empty net goal as his Louis Erickson legend is growing.
Brendan, how you doing, man?
Well, I don't know if I can remember it. Well, no, I do. It was around 12 years ago, 13 years ago, that I remember a time where I felt this good about this hockey team, where you feel like they have the script to go into any game against any team and win. Home, road, it doesn't matter. And it's an amazing feeling to have that. I mean, I do remember in 2011, it just you felt like they were going to win every night, and you felt that once they got the lead, they had the tools and the ability to hold on to that lead, extend that lead, what have you, and close it out every time they had it. And um, it's sort of the same feeling. I mean, I loathe to compare the two teams, you know, because how do you compare two teams like that? But certainly, how could I be anything other than positive about what's going on right now? I mean, I think this whole fan base is enamored with this team, and rightly so. And it has every right to feel great about the way their hockey team is playing through 41 games at the midway point of the season. Still a long way to go. Still a lot of things can happen, injuries or what have you. But at this moment in time, every fan of this hockey club should be extremely happy with what they've seen.
I feel like it feels like a dream, I think, for a lot of us fans.
Sure.
The Canucks, it just it, I think we all had, I don't want to say low expectations, but we were just, checking our expectations. I know you, Pete, and I, one of the first episodes of the season, we all said we didn't think this was a playoff team. Um, but yeah, you see that excitement starting to bubble back up in the city. People, I have friends, I'm sure you've got friends who are casual hockey fans, casual sports fans. And they're starting to be more interested in the Canucks. So like, oh,
Yeah.
did you see that Petey goal last night? Or did you see that Hoglander kid? Right. And it's like you're starting to see the city come alive again, which is nice. And to your point, I think one of the biggest improvements us fans wanted to see from this team heading into this year is their defensive play. And yes, they still have defensive breakdowns and
Every
lazy
team
back
does.
checks.
This
Exactly.
is not this is yeah.
Exactly.
Even the best defensive teams have lapses. It
Of
happens.
course
So
they do.
yeah.
But the how much better, and I know it goes to the S word structure, but just how much better of a defensive team this Canuck team is. You mentioned the third period against the New York Islanders. Like they completely shut down that Islanders team in the third period. I think they held them to like 3 or 4 shots. Everything was to the outside. Guys were back checking. They were making the right plays. There was that one play during the game where it looked like the puck was going to get batted in. I think it was by Barzell, and Susie just batted it out of the air. It was a really good heads up stick hand eye coordination to get it out of the way. And it's exciting again.
Yeah.
People are like really excited about this team.
Um, I'll say, I mean, when I said at the beginning of the year that this, I don't want to say that I didn't think this was a playoff team because I've always thought that they were capable of it. It was just more of, I'm going to say no until they show me. Show
Yeah.
me that you're a playoff team. Show me that you are what you say they are. And to their credit, they absolutely have. My expectations early in the season, especially when you're kind of you're learning a new system, you're trying to become more comfortable within the structure that your coach wants you to play. I expected them to I don't think struggle was the right word, but I thought they would be in more of low event games, maybe
Me too.
as they were trying to gain their footing defensively, they would maybe struggle to score 5 on 5. And there was a maybe a slight stretch early, but they were still scoring goals because their power play was so good. And now that their power play is struggling, 5 on 5, they look good. And that the last couple of games, i- it's what I hoped I would see, which was a team that's now comfortable within the structure that the coach wants them to play. And now you're starting to see that offensive game come alive, especially
Yeah.
with the way they're scoring off of the rush. Um, and to me, the biggest difference defensively, as well as the defense is playing, is what I've always wanted to see for the last few years, which was a commitment from the forwards. To
Yeah.
me, a really good defensive team, it starts with, do you have buy-in from your forwards to always be in the right positions? And you see that not just within the way they play structurally defensively, but then once the puck is turned over, how they end up pushing the puck back up the ice. It just looks in sync. It just looks like everybody's on the same page. The players are where there's no double clutching from the defense anymore.
No.
I think that was an issue that most of us, had seen going back 4 or 5 years. Was the defenseman would have the puck and we would blame them for not moving it fast enough. Well, it's hard to move a puck fast if you don't know where your forward's going to be or they're not where you're expecting them to be. That's when you have double clutching. That's when you have issues making outlet passes, or you put pucks to spaces of the ice where no one is. Now it's not that way. Players are where they're supposed to be, so it makes it easier for your defenseman then to make that that quick first pass, which is what Talkett wants, and move the puck up lightning quick. Which and it's beautiful hockey. some of the goals they've scored, just some of the plays the defensemen to make up to the forward, one touch passes, good seal offs along the wall that allow for great breakouts. I mean, it's all there right now. And it's what I had hoped to see once they got comfortable with the way Talkett wanted them to play. The nice thing is they just started really well. So there haven't been lulls. So the fact now that they're 27-11-3, sitting at 57 points at the midway point of the season, it's just you couldn't have asked for a better start.
No, I think they're this Canucks longest losing streak of the season is 2 games.
2
That's the
games.
longest losing streak they've had all year. I think they've
And
done it
it's the sign
twice.
of a good team, right? You
Absolutely.
yeah, you lose the game and you don't panic. You know the way your coach wants you to play. You rebound and you find a way to win the next game. Or in the case of what happened after St. Louis, the next 3 games against 3, pretty tough opponents.
And even that St. Louis game, sure, they didn't get the outcome they were hoping for, but I
It
thought they were
wasn't
the
bad.
better team.
Yeah.
No, I thought they were the better team. Like you said, their power play has struggled the last 2 or 3 weeks, but the 5-on-5 game and just their transition game overall. Like you said, having a guy like Hronek, and I was optimistic about the addition. I did think it was a little bit steep of a price. I didn't mind giving up the first. For me, it was adding the second round pick, but you know what? Well worth it. He's been well worth it. And having a partner like that who can also break out passes from his own zone, much like a Quinn Hughes, this team just seems to be clicking and buying in. I think that's the big thing is that commitment and that buy-in from their forwards. And it's just reciprocating right down to your defense, to the goaltending, the coaching. I mean, it's nice, and again, do I think they're going to be the Stanley Cup champions this year? I don't know. Like, I don't think so. Demko, if he gets hot enough, we've seen goalies take lesser teams with lesser talent than what this current Canuck team has to a Stanley Cup championship. I think of a former Jim Rutherford team, and that's the Carolina Hurricanes from, what was it, 2006, 2007, I want to say. It was coming right out of
Yes.
the lockout.
Might have been 05, 06, maybe.
Maybe it was 05-06 against the Oilers. And Cam Ward, who, and yes, they had some good players. Eric Stahl was on that team,
It was
but
a
Cam
rookie though.
Ward, he was, yeah, you're right. But you get a goalie who's hot. This team could, maybe make a push. I don't know.
It's gone from, yeah, I mean, a long shot to all of a sudden feeling like it's not out of the question, and I
Yeah,
think that's where we sit right now. It by no means. I'm not going to sit here and say, I mean, that they're a favorite, even though the odds say they are. Because to be fair, I mean, most of the players on that team either don't have a lot of playoff experience or haven't been in the playoffs for a while. So, yeah, that has to factor into it. But again, it's not inconceivable now, which I think for most fans at the beginning of the season, if we would be saying that at the midway point, I'd be like, "Oh, hey, if we've gone from no chance to wait a minute, now they've got an actual chance." It feels pretty damn good, and um, I mean, to have everybody on the same page in the organization now after, I mean, just to think where we were 365 days ago, where the tune around the organization was much different. And, it's something I had to tell a lot of people, who were getting really angry, starting to question this management group, as I just said, hey, let them get their people in place. Like
yeah.
let them get the coach that they want, that they trust and feel good, and then judge them on what they've done, because it's hard to judge them on a coach that they didn't really really want to begin with. And to be fair to Bruce Boudreau, it probably wasn't the right coach at the right time anyways. And you can blame the owner, I suppose, for that, because he was the one who hired him. But it feels good right now. It feels like everything's in sync, from the players on the ice to the coaches, to management. And coming from where we were last year, it just I mean, no one could have thought, even the most positive fan could have ever have thought that this is where we would be sitting right now.
No, and I mean, there was a lot of drama last year. Boudreaux is one of them. There was the Rachel Dory situation, trading your captain, Bo Horvat, seemingly committing and choosing JT Miller over Bo Horvat. A lot of people had a lot of strong opinions about that. I will say this. I have noticed that some of the more staunch JT Miller haters are starting to actually come around and appreciate the player he is, which is nice to see. I think some people were just so, and I saw one person admit it, that his hate for Jim Benning and the incompetence of Jim Benning in his eyes was so overshadowed for anything he did. He couldn't get behind the Miller trade because it just didn't make sense, and it made him not realize what an actual good player JT Miller has been. Speaking of Miller and this team, what are your thoughts on the Lotto line being reunited, and do you think that is a long-term play for this team, or do they need to potentially add a true second line center, even though Bluger and or Pius Suter have been playing exceptionally well? Would you stick with the Lotto line from here till potentially the playoffs?
Well, first of all, I think the Lotto line was put together because and rightly so after that, after the St. Louis game. Again, and like
Yeah,
you said, not that they played poorly, but I think what Talk would recognize is you're gonna play on the road. You might be playing in some tight games, and so if you're gonna play in tight games, you need your best players to be the ones that shine through. That's what good teams do in tight games. It's what the 2010, 2011 Canucks were all about. It was all about when games were tight, you knew the Sedins or Ryan Kessler or whoever were going to find a way to get a goal that changed the dynamic of any game. And that seemed to be what was lacking in St. Louis. Like you said, the Canucks were probably the better team. It wasn't like they didn't have chances. They did. I can remember, Brock Besser with a great chance, Bluger with a
yep.
couple great chances, among others. So the chances were there. They just didn't bury them. And so I think Talkett, and rightly so, just sat there and was like, okay, well, if this is the way this road trip is going to shape up, and we're going to be playing in tight games, let's load up and let's see what our best players can do. And obviously, what they've done has been absolutely unreal. In all three games, they've been just absolutely fantastic, dynamic. Um, it's just you put three good players with elite hockey sense and elite skill together, and you see what you get. And so moving forward, it'll be interesting to see how Talkett decides to move forward. I think for now, obviously, you got to keep them together. I mean, your team's winning, they're scoring at an alarming rate, and on top of that, it's not like you're not getting secondary scoring as well. You're getting Hoglander scoring, still getting Connor Garland scoring and Dakota Joshua
Joshua.
scoring.
Yeah.
So you're getting that secondary scoring as well. And I mean, hopefully at some point you get something out of Suter, Mikheyev, and Kuzmenko, because um I don't think they've been particularly bad, and certainly they've had their chance. I think Kuzmenko's had chances. It's just the puck's not going in for him, much like it has most of the year, sadly, for him. Um, so I mean, do they need to add? I mean, in terms of additions for this team, I think not rentals. I don't think
Ye-
anything you get. I don't think a rental at this point. And to be fair to this management group, nothing that they've said has led me to believe that that's the direction that they want to go. I think Alvin, has made it clear on multiple occasions that if they're going to go after somebody, they're looking at beyond this year as well. And Rutherford has said that as well, that this is the opening of the window. This isn't the closing of the window. So anybody that you might get, you would hope that either they would have a desire to stick around here, or they'd have term on their contract, and they're at an age where they can continue to be an important impact player. So at that point, maybe then you split up the Lotto line. But scoring's not this team's problem. I mean, there've been a couple of games where maybe the puck hasn't gone in the net, but that happens to every team. you're seeing Vegas right now really struggle to score. And so it's certainly they're not the Canucks, having a game here and there. And again, they're leading the league in goals for. So it'll be interesting to see how they navigate this as we head. I believe the trade deadline's in March, so we're still a ways away. Um, but I know a lot of teams would rather make the move sooner rather than later, is to get those players acclimated to the team in time for a playoff run. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they navigate this, and what chips are in play, what may not be in play. So, but I definitely do think nothing that this management team has shown us that they're not willing to make a deal if it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I also think that this management group heading into this season, their priority was to probably move on from pending UFAs. I don't think they thought the team would be this good halfway through the season. So maybe that changes their thought process on adding a potential rental player. I know the Canucks are about to play Pittsburgh tomorrow night. We're recording this on the Wednesday, the 10th of January. And Jake Gensel's name's been obviously bountied around. I like Gensel as a player. He has been a little bit injury prone the last couple of years. I do think he's going to ask for big money that I don't think the Canucks can really afford to pay. But, he's a guy that I think before the lotto line got put back together, they were looking for a winger for Petey because Kuzmenko and Mikheyev just wasn't really working. And apparently, from what I heard, and again, not that I have sources, but someone reported, someone had said that Petey had actually gone to the coaching staff and said, "Hey, what are your guys' thoughts on putting the lotto line back together?" Essentially, and I think Talkett said, "Sure, let's try it." Um, yeah, it's interesting. I don't think this team needs much. I think the other guy, that has really stepped up, and I'm not saying that they couldn't use another solid right shot defenseman, but I do think Noah Juleson has really kind of found his groove, and he has become, arguably this team's best penalty killer, at least on the back end. And he's a guy that, last night we saw a maintenance day for an Ian Cole, which I like that. I like the fact that Rick
You're deep
Tocchet gave
enough,
him a
right?
maintenance day. Absolutely. And I think, it's kind of like what I forget the guy's name, but the coach of the San Antonio Spurs, he started that whole trend of like
Popovich.
Greg Popovich of like load management in the NBA. And, you're starting to slowly see that creep into other sports like hockey or baseball. And I thought it was a really great move. And yes, they could absolutely use another right shot defenseman, and potentially, if you're going to keep the lotto line together now, because I think the thought was maybe you find a winger to play with Petey. Do you look for a second line center? And there's a couple of guys out there like Elias Lindholm. I know Travis Konechny, although Philly's playing really well. He's another guy whose name's been out there. Trevor Zegras, who's really young, but I don't think he's the type of player this team needs or wants personally. Like you said, Brendan, this team scores enough as it is. They need more of a two-way center. Like one name that I think sat throughout today, and again, I don't know if Minnesota would do it, but like a Joel Eriksson Ek, a guy who's a really solid two-way player who plays with a little bit of grit, can put the puck in the net, but he's more known for his two-way game. It's interesting because obviously you've got Demko signed for 3 more years, including this season. Hughes is signed for 4 more years, including this season. So I agree with you. I think the window is just opening, but I do think, this team is going to probably make a big push in the next year or two to
Mhm.
really kind of put all their chips in and actually go for a playoff run. Is this the year they should do it? I kind of agree with you. I don't think it's really the year to do it, depending on who becomes available. But yeah, man, it's very exciting to even be thinking about that stuff as opposed to the fucking draft lottery every
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, thinking about, "Hey, what can I get for Tyler Myers?" Who,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
who is on pace to have his best season statistically since his
yeah.
rookie year. And again, it goes to show you, and again, I mean, I know people who listen to the show are going to be like, "Shut the fuck up, Brendan." But I mean, it does come down to being in a more structured environment, and it's something that I argued for a long, long time, that these defensemen that we throw under the bus so consistently for not doing their jobs, in the way that we see it as fans. And in my opinion, it always was that there just seemed to be a disconnect between forwards and defense on this team. And so to see Tyler Myers playing the way that he's playing, and let's be honest, he's always, I mean, there's a mistake's always going to be happen. It's always going to happen. It will be there. But you know, um, it just feels like everybody's in tune. And so I don't know, like in terms of adding to the defense and looking back, like if you look at those Pittsburgh teams and if you look at that Carolina team, their defense was not was not full of all stars. Especially if you look at that last cup team that Pittsburgh had without Chris Letang in the lineup. I mean, it was a very veteran laden defense with guys that could
Ian Cole was on that team.
Ian Cole was on that team. Yeah, I mean, guys that can move the puck, and make quick decisions, and then defend the front of their net well. So I'll be interested to see if I mean maybe they go for a depth option. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I fully agree. I think Noah Julesen's been a very unsung
Yeah.
part of that defense core. He struggled at the beginning of the season, but he came into the lineup and hadn't played in a while, and so you expect a guy to be rusty. Especially you're trying to learn a new system. You've got a lot of new players that you're trying to figure out how to play with, and as soon as he got comfortable and comfortable within the way that they want him to play, which is smart, sound, physical, do the little things that need to be done, block shots, kill
Yeah.
penalties. He's done it extremely well for a guy that's getting paid, I believe, the league minimum. And being a 6'7" defenseman, that's what you want. That's the depth that you want. And most teams don't have, to be able to call on. So to be able to, come out of the game against the Rangers and, give Ian Cole the night off and put Juleson in and look better defensively. I mean, that's a hallmark of a team that's playing well as a unit, where no one guy is having to carry the mail. Because it just seemed so often in the past that the defenses here in Vancouver, that the defensemen were expected to defend on an island far too often, and now they're not expected to do that. They know they're going to have support and help, and so um, it'll be interesting to see again, like I said, how they navigate things going up and what this management group feels are the real holes. I mean, I don't know if they're certainly not gaping, but what pinholes can they fill in at the deadline, if any? Um, and I mean, it's going to be a fun next couple of months. I mean, the schedule for the Canucks will get lighter in terms of games played because they played far more than most teams in the league. But it's going to get tougher in terms of strength of opponents. I believe somebody said it was this the stat came out that the average points at the end of the season of the teams that the Canucks are going to play is that like 92. So they're playing mostly playoff teams.
Yeah.
Um, but again, with the way they're playing right now, um, this team should fear no one. They shouldn't walk into any arena or into their own arena facing anyone feeling like they're the inferior opponent. And to me, that is as important a thing for this team to understand as anything. To get that mindset in place that we are as good as anybody and that we don't should not fear anybody. And if we play the way that this coaching staff wants us to play, we can beat anybody. There's no one that we can't beat in one game, in 7 games. It doesn't matter. I mean, that to me again is as important a mindset as any for this group because they haven't had it because they haven't been that good.
Yeah, and I think, you heard similar comments from Quinn Hughes after the Islanders game last night. I think Ian McIntyre said like, "Hey, like obviously, it's just a 3-game thing, but are you not like extremely proud and happy with the team and with yourself, for this going through New Jersey, New York Rangers, and the Islanders like you did these last 3 games?" And Quinn Hughes was like, "I really want to say I'm super happy and I'm proud. And obviously I am proud, but I'm already, we're already thinking about our next opponent and trying to kind of get prepared for that because it's a long season and, we're only halfway there. And then there's, playoffs And I think this team right now, the mindset of this team seems really, really good. Yes, they did shrink a little bit against Vegas in their one meeting so far this year, and the Avs as well. But I do think those two games they learned a lot. And Vegas, like you said, they're struggling quite a bit right now.
LA as
The
well.
Avs, yeah, well, the LA's definitely. I think the Canucks actually have a 10-point lead on the Kings now. I think the Kings still have 2 or 3 games in hand. But yeah, I think the Canucks have a 10-point lead on LA, who they haven't played yet this year, surprisingly. But yeah, I think right now, and you touched on some of these defensemen over the years, and the guy I keep going back to is Jalen Chatfield, and how Chatfield in Vancouver, he was an eighth defenseman. Generally speaking, he did get some playing time, but that was because there wasn't a lot of depth on the blue line to begin with. And then he goes to a team like Carolina, plays for a coach like Rod Brindamore, who is, cut from that same cloth as a Rick Tocchet, a hard-nosed guy who plays, coaches with structure and wants his guys being in certain positions. And you're seeing Jalen Chatfield as an everyday NHL player playing, top 6 minutes, as a defender, but still, you know what I mean? And he was an eighth defenseman in Vancouver. And it does go to show you that, yes, talent, generally speaking, and skill will outweigh will, but you still need will and you still need that structure to harness that talent
The
to
environment,
its
right?
full potential. Exactly. I mean, you brought this up. I remember when Pete and I had you on the podcast the very first time, all those years back. And one of the things that you said, and it's always stuck with me, Brennan, is what Alain Vigneault did with that 2010-11 team. I guess it was before then. It was a couple years before then, where he brought them back and made them learn how to play defensive hockey first. And after a year and a half of, learning the system, committing to the system, playing the system, that's when the offense started happening. That's when you saw Henrik with his Art Ross trophy season. That's when you saw Daniel with his, Art Ross trophy season. That's when you saw Ryan Kessler score 40 goals, right? And I think that's what we're seeing now with this Canuck team. And sure, they were able to score goals in bushels last year, but you're seeing that commitment to the defensive side of the game, as well as being able to put the puck in the net. And that's been one of the biggest changes this year.
You watch the team play, and to me, it's like, and the importance of learning that defensive element of the game is, when the game sort of gets out of control, and it will from time to time, especially if you're playing
Yep.
the way the Canucks are playing right now, which is a very, very up tempo, get that puck up and go, 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 go. The nice thing is you have that structure to fall back on when you have to go and defend. You don't go back into chaos, right? And if you watch the Canucks last year, years previous, whether it was Travis Green as the coach or Bruce Boudreau as the coach, when they would come back to defend in their own end, it was almost like no one knew where to go.
Yeah.
That there
Willie
was,
Desjardins too, I would say. That
yeah,
era
well,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I mean, you didn't know where to go, so it was it's very hard to defend in that sort of a chaotic environment, and so you give up the kind of chances they would, crossing passes like 5 to 10 every single game. Um, Now, because they understand their structure, they practice it at pace, which I think is as important as anything, is that you practice it at that pace. Because if you're practicing at that pace, it's like Michael Jordan in basketball. We're going to practice the way we play.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to operate in that environment when you get into a game situation. Um, uh, you know, in terms of the mindset again. You look at. I think it's much easier to um, listen to a coach that's been there before, and and assistants as well. I mean, Adam Foote, won a couple of cups as well. And Tocchet obviously won cups in Pittsburgh. And so I mean, and who did Tocchet learn from? In Pittsburgh,
Mario.
But Scotty
Well, oh,
Bowman
the
was the
coach. Yeah.
coach,
Sorry.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like the ability to understand that mindset of what it takes to to be a champion, not just when the playoffs start, but to build that mindset throughout the season that we're never going to be happy with, what just happened. We're going to focus on what's coming next. I mean, it's an important mindset to have, and it's certainly in terms of this team is not one that they've had in the past. I mean, we've seen it, where they would have great performances and then they would follow it up by falling flat on their face. I mean, it's something that has been said a lot by fans and media in this city. It's just almost that they got fat and happy with themselves. And so it's now building that mindset that, hey, we're happy with what just happened, but time to put that aside and focus on what's coming next. And when you have a coach that has lived that mantra, coaches that have lived that mantra,
Yeah,
it's much easier for the players to listen to that and gravitate that because they know the coach lived that, and had found success with it. So, I mean, I just again, I mean, I've lauded the coaching staff, you know, for I mean, since the beginning of the year because they've been so good. But again, I mean, I think Rick Tockett's well on his way to winning the Jack Adams. Obviously another half of a year to go, so things can change. But I mean, I just think what he's done in terms of building a culture, which I have argued with, I won't say the name of the media member who said that coaches don't build culture. Coaches do build culture.
I agree with
Coaches
that.
coaches hand the culture to the players, and then it's up to the players to live that culture. And I think that is what Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote, Sergei Gonchar, the Sedins, this ridiculous wealth of knowledge on their coaching staff is what they've imparted to these players. And good on the players because it's up to the players. The players have to be the ones that do it, and they've listened, they've gravitated to it, especially because they found that it's led to success. So success is the breeder of a culture like that. So 41 games in, so it's just a lot of good stuff for this group.
Yeah, and even a guy like Mike Yo, I know
Yeah, for sure.
he's
Yeah,
got lots.
I
Yeah,
shouldn't
he's got
forget
lots
him
of
as well.
coaching.
Multiple
No,
coaching
exactly.
stops, and had
Yeah,
success as a head
exactly.
coach.
Absolutely, he has. And Gonchar, I believe, won a Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh. Was he on the first
Ew,
Stanley
boy,
Cup that Crosby won
I'd have to find that
back?
out.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought Gonchar, maybe he didn't, but I thought he might have been on that first Pittsburgh Cup that Crosby won. But you're right. I agree. I think coaching sets the culture, and it's up to the players to continue to build on that culture and to carry it forward, right? And I do think, you know, when Vino left the Canucks, you did see a shift in the culture, right? You did see a shift in that dynamic with the team. And I
All right,
think,
just
that's
to say it, you're
yeah,
right. He won the Stanley Cup on Crosby's first
okay.
in
So that was
in
what,
2000 in
2008,
2009.
2009. Oh, that's right. Because wasn't that the year they went back to back where
Yeah, yeah,
Detroit
they
won in
lost it. Yeah,
2008? Yeah,
yeah,
and
and
then the
then
next year, and it was funny because in the basketball, wasn't it the same with the Lakers and the Celtics,
I
where the
believe that
Celtics
is
won in 208, and then 209 the Lakers
I
and then met again, and
yes, I believe that is correct. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I do think that a lot, and I think Rutherford and Alvin, people were very quick to judge them, and I agree. Like, I don't think it was fair. Let them get their people in their place. Let them get to another year of unrestricted free agency. Let's see how this pro scouting team, because that's been arguably the biggest difference, is how more competent this management group is at identifying pro players. And signing them to deals that you're almost annoyed that a guy like Bluger isn't signed to a multi-year deal, or Ian Cole, even for 2 years. It's like, man, like Bluger, you're probably going to lose Bluger. Dakota Joshua, and I know Joshua's, he was only signed to a 2-year deal, but he's playing himself up for a lot of money as well. And I think right now it's just that buzz that we haven't seen for so long. It's nice. It's nice to see. And you know what? I don't think anyone's expecting a Stanley Cup parade this year or anything like that. But getting to the playoffs, maybe even just getting past the first round and getting that taste of what it takes to win is what this group, I think, will need to elevate to the next level. One thing I did want to ask you about, Brendan, I know we're a Canucks podcast, but I do want to ask you about this and just kind of get your take on this, especially not that it happened, but just the team it happened to, because I think that's what's the biggest surprise for me. But the whole Cutter Gauthier situation, because to me, I can understand when a player doesn't want to play for an Arizona or an Anaheim or a Calgary or a Carolina. You know, I think of Adam Fox, who was drafted by Calgary, told them he didn't want to play for them. They traded him to Carolina for a second round pick. Carolina couldn't get a deal done. And then he initially drove himself, to go to the Rangers. And that's where he signed. But a team like the Philadelphia Flyers, to me, that was more shocking than Gauthier saying he didn't want to play for them. Is just the team that he said no to. And by all accounts, like guys like John LeClair went to go meet him and he refused. I don't know if you heard this report. Apparently, John LeClair him and Patrick Sharp went to a Boston University game and were trying to meet with him after the game just to talk to him. And his coach came out and said he's not coming to talk to you guys. I mean, to me, the arrogance with that. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. And again, I know we're a Canuck podcast, but that's kind of the biggest topic in hockey right now. And I do think it's worth talking about for a few minutes here.
No, definitely is. I mean, it's. I mean, again, we don't have all the information, so it's hard to, you know.
No.
But when you hear stuff like that, um, you know, it just seems as it just smacks of a character issue. Um, you know, like the fact that he won't even give them an answer as to why, and I
Yeah.
think that's what Philadelphia wants. Hey, what went wrong? Because I think they're legitimately stunned. Was it, you heard rumors about an issue with him coming out, and him coming out to play for Philadelphia this year rather than go back to Boston College, and um, that Philadelphia just didn't have the 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 cap space and or the money to do it, and that's what got his panties in a wad.
I don't
Um,
know, man.
but if this is the case, certainly this. I mean, good on Philadelphia because if Jamie Drysdale, which health has been his biggest issue, if he can stay healthy and if he can, thrive, and if you look at some of the like, I'll name a couple of defensemen that thrived under Tortorella that have not thrived since. Um, Zach Wierenski, who's a
Yep.
who's a good defenseman, but he's never been anywhere close to what he was when
I will say
Tortorella
this,
was there.
health has been an issue for Werenski over
Sure,
the years as
sure,
well. But yeah, no,
sure.
you're right though.
And then the other one, Jacob Chikrin.
Yeah.
No, sorry, Jacob Chikrin. Sorry, wasn't Torrance. Jacob Chikrin was Talkett. Sorry, but I could add that
Oh, yeah,
again.
yeah.
But a more structured environment. Again, there's that word again. Have a sip of whatever you're drinking. But that environment that good coaches create for their defensemen really help, and certainly, I mean, Drysdale has an opportunity to go and I think be a very, very important piece for that team moving forward. And so to turn a potential cataclysmic cataclysmic negative, and apparently Briere went around to or thanked a whole whack of GMs after the process and after the trade had been made to thank them for not outing this because no one knew this was happening. No one.
Yeah.
That this was not made public. And so he went around and thanked other GMs for not making not for not putting this out into the well, the Twitter sphere, I suppose, would be just enough to make it a big deal. And allowed them to, you know, basically make this trade without any outside interference or any big hoopla about it. And I think because most teams look at that situation, look at what happened, and clearly must in some way sympathize with what they've gone through. That clearly something went on there that they don't know. That they must feel that Philadelphia didn't do anything that was out of the ordinary. And certainly, I don't. I mean, suck it up and go back to college for one more year, you big baby. Like, God, I
Well,
mean,
what
I'm
what
sorry,
I
imagine
yeah,
John
yeah.
LeClair and Patrick
Dude,
Sharp, like Patrick
dude.
Sharp, a multi-time Stanley Cup champion, come to your game and want to talk to you, and you say no, you
Yeah.
grandstand them?
Yeah.
Really? Fuck you is my answer to that. Fuck
Dude,
off.
Look, I think I heard someone say this, and I thought it was actually very interesting. I think what's happened in college sports as a whole is the transfer portal. Now you can transfer and be playing for another team the following year, where before, if you wanted to transfer, you had to sit out a year. And so I think a lot of these guys, that's kind of commonplace for them, where they can just kind of dictate where they want to go. And then they get to that pro level. But the thing that doesn't make sense, if it's that he wanted to come out this year and the Flyers said, we're worried about overages with potential bonuses and cap implications, so stay for another year. And then he decides he's going to pull this because apparently there were breadcrumbs leading up to this, right? He didn't show up to development camp. There was rumors at the draft that last year where they were trying to make a trade Gauthier to the Montreal Canadiens for the 5th overall pick because they wanted David Reinbacher, and that to them meant they would definitely be getting Mitchkov at 7. So they would have come away with Reinbacher and Mitchkov. But Montreal allegedly turned them down and decided that they wanted Reinbacher for themselves. But for me, what I find crazy is if the report, and I saw the same report, I believe it was Elliot Friedman, is that there was a little bit of discrepancy about whether or not, he wanted to go back for another year. But let's say that was the issue. Philly could have dug their heels in and said, fine, you know what? You can stay in college for the next 2 years before you'll actually have your UFA rights to go and sign with whoever you want. And we'll get our 2-year or our second round pick compensation. So that's what is mind boggling to me is I do think there's more to the story. Maybe we won't know. There's a rumor going around that Kevin Hayes, who's a BU alum, got in his ear about Tortorella because obviously there's the big meltdown last year between Hayes and Torts. Hayes was pissed about his playing time and Torts was, calling him out for not being a fully committed 200-foot player. We've seen Torts do this with guys like Pierre-Luc Dubois and Brad Richards, and maybe that's what happened. But of all the teams as well, Philadelphia just doesn't make sense. That's not one of the, he's an American kid. I know he's a Pittsburgh Penguins fan allegedly, but it just
That'd be
kind
a
of blows
weird
me away.
reason, I mean, that'd be like
I
Jerome again.
know.
Be like Jerome Iginla giving the middle finger to Calgary when he got traded to Calgary because he was an Edmonton Oilers fan growing up, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, to me, like everybody, the list of players that went to teams that were rivals of the teams that they cheered for growing up, it'd be like, hey, here's an example: Jamie Carragher in Britain, who was a lifelong Everton fan, being part of Liverpool, but then telling Liverpool to fuck off because he's because he's an Everton fan, right? I mean,
yeah,
doesn't happen. It just wouldn't happen. I mean, players in all sports should just be happy to be where they
I
are, right?
agree.
I mean, playing professional sports is a gift that not many people get. So be humble. And it sounds like, if this is going the direction that it might, it sounds like this kid needs a little taste of humble pie.
Yeah, and it's funny, I guess, that it is Philly because Eric Lindros bullied his way out of Quebec all those years ago and ended up in Philly.
Maybe this
But
is
I
where
agree with
Philly
you.
gets their revenge, and Jamie Drysdale is their Peter Forsberg. Who knows?
Well, I was just gonna say Drysdale has an assist already in his debut for Philly tonight.
Well, there you go.
Um,
And
but should we move on to the free pour here, Brendan?
absolutely.
All right. I wanted to talk about a documentary I got to watch over the weekend. It's on Amazon Prime. And it's the Barry Sanders documentary. It's called Bye Bye Barry. And Barry Sanders, running back for the Detroit Lions in the 90s, was one of my all-time favorite players. And he's always been a very private athlete, a private person. There's the Barry's kind of the guy who started the act like you've been there before, right? When he would get a touchdown, he wouldn't dance, he wouldn't do anything. He would go right up to the ref, hand him the ball, run back to the sideline. And it's just a great glimpse into not only Barry, but just Detroit. You got fans like Eminem is in the documentary, Jeff Daniels, which I didn't realize or know
He's a
he was a
Michigan.
big,
Yeah,
he's a
he's a
Michigan,
Michigan
Tim
guy.
Allen. Tim
Oh yeah,
Allen as well.
obviously. Yeah, yeah.
I know. I knew Tim, but I didn't realize about Jeff Daniels. Jeff Daniels is a massive
He moved
Detroit
away.
Lions fan.
He moved away from Hollywood and moved back to Michigan because he didn't want to
Yeah,
live. He'd
man.
much rather live outside of Hollywood.
Which totally makes sense. But yeah, it's a great documentary. And what's interesting, and yes, do I think the way Barry retired, he sent the day of training camp, he sent the Detroit Lions a fax and then jumped on a plane to London, which is very weird and random. But news got leaked out that he was on this plane to London. So when he landed in London, there was all these reporters waiting, taking his photo, trying to ask him questions. But what's cool about the documentary, and again, it's not really much of a spoiler, near the end of the documentary, when he's trying to explain, why he did what he did and the reasonings of him retiring in his prime, so to speak, especially being so close to Walter Payton's all-time rushing record, he would have broke it the next season. He gets on a plane to London with his 4 boys. And they go and have lunch in London, and they're just asking him questions about why he retired and why he came to London. And he's kind of showing them around London. It's a really good documentary. I've rambled about a bit too long on it, but if you're a Barry Sanders fan, it's called Bye Bye Barry on Amazon Prime. Definitely check it out.
Damn, where's my picture? Oh, there it is. That's the one I want. I'm sure. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're a fan of the NFL, you know already that Seattle Seahawks coach Pete Carroll has um, it's hard to say whether he would. It said, like, I suppose in a roundabout way that he was fired, but I mean, I guess it was more of a mutual parting of the ways. I guess if they didn't want them there, and thus ends for us Seattle Seahawks fans. Obviously, the greatest era in Seahawks football. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it. And to win a Super Bowl and become so agonizingly close to a second Super Bowl. Um, I mean, regardless of whether you're a Seahawk fan or you're not a Seahawk fan, I think most fans of the NFL will agree that the sport was better for having him on the sidelines because, I mean, you saw a man who clearly loved the game of football and he loved his players. If you get a chance, listen to his uh, um, his press conference, which was, if you're going to be let go from a job, that was as classy of a press conference as you could give, not blaming anybody, giving all the love to all the people, and most importantly, giving love to the players because Pete Carroll loved his players as much as any coach in any sport. He recognizes and he gets it that it's not about the coaches, it's not about the jerseys, it's not about the stadiums, it's about the players. And without the players, that sport is nothing. So it's a bittersweet day. I think most fans knew he's 72 years old, so at some point this was going to come. This was not going to last forever. Um, but it's nevertheless still sad because it's a day that we wished would never come. But I think we all knew that it was probably a time for Seattle to move on to hopefully create a new era. They've got a young team, and um, but I mean, thanks Pete Carroll. I mean, from every Seahawk fan, you won't be forgotten. Obviously, you left a mark on this fan base that will last for a very very long time. And yeah, it's a bittersweet day is the best way to put it.
Yeah, and obviously Nick Saban retiring in Alabama as well. So it's like
Possibly,
two
yeah. Bill
iconic
Belichick,
coaches. Belichick,
possibly as well.
I'm the Patriots fan, so I'm still kind of waiting to hear what happens in New England. But yeah, two major iconic coaches. I think Carroll's one of 3 coaches, or maybe one of 2 coaches that's won a national championship at the college level and a Super Bowl. So his resume is already cemented. He'll be in Canton, and I'm not a Seahawks fan, but it's definitely the end of an era for Seahawks fans for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's was gonna happen, but still, no, sad nevertheless.
All right. That's episode 160 wrapped up in the books. No Pete this week. Brendan, I think we forgot to do the plugs earlier in the episode. So hopefully you've listened to this far into the episode. But yeah, Pete, who's not here, you can give him a follow at Pete_gas. Be sure to follow the Canucks Speakeasy account at Canucks Speak on Twitter.
Hey, if there was ever an episode we were going to forget, it was going to be after during an episode like this where the Canucks are playing this well. So I'm Brendan, aka Jabo. You can find me at Jabo_Vancouver, and I've actually restarted up for all my friends on Facebook who were yelling at me to get back on Facebook. I do have a Just a Bit Outside Facebook
Ooh,
page that you are more than welcome to go follow. We've got like I think around 1,500 followers there that are still there even though I haven't been on for a couple of years, that I came back on today because somebody told me I should. So I did. So if you're on Facebook, you can follow me there as well. And
nice.
hey, YouTube, go subscribe.
Yes.
Our ugly mugs are on YouTube. Go hit that subscribe button. It's always more fun to see our faces there.
And you could give me a follow on Twitter at Doug Venn and check out our playlist. It's on Apple Music and Spotify. It's the Canucks Speakeasy outro playlist. Thanks for listening.